You all. As it says up there, my name is Martin Shadbolt. I'm the head of primary school at Jumeirah Baccalaureate School. I've been here 3 years, my third year here in the UAE. Prior to that I was in Qatar and China and Singapore, and originally from the UK many years ago. During that time I've been working mostly with the IB program. I don't know if I know anyone from an IB school here. Any IB schools? 1, 2. So got a couple of IB programs, and part of the IB I'll talk about in a little bit is to promote student action, what we call student-led action. And this is part of my action because one of my goals this year was to present in a public forum, which I've rarely done before and is not in my comfort zone, so this is the first time I'm doing it. So this is my teacher-led action that I'm taking today with you here. I don't profess to be an expert, but I want to give you a little bit of a rundown, and I'm going to take you through the journey that our school has been on in terms of thinking about what action means, why we want to do it, how we're going to do it, and why, and what's the purpose of it. So it's a little bit misleading to say this, you're going to leave here to know how to promote student-led action, because you probably won't. It's a big question, and we haven't finished our journey yet as a school. We've only just started it. So you won't probably leave knowing how to promote positive student action, but I hope that you will leave having experienced a little bit more, perhaps with some ideas, having some discussions with your peers and colleagues about how to think about action in the school. So just start that off then. It is an interactive session, so you're not just going to sit there. So have a think about some of these questions, and I'll put you into little groups. If you're not in a group, just join another one or make your own. So what do you think is student-led action? And have a little discussion here, not within your group. Should we focus on it? Why should we focus on it? And then if you have some examples of what you think it is, just scribble them down on individual post-its. So each one on a different one. We're going to use these a little bit later. So just scribble down an idea of something you might have done in your school which you think was action or student action that you think. And I'm not going to give you any clues to what you might think that is. I want to hear from you. So within your group there, have a little discussion, introduce yourselves. It's always good to get to know new people. What is student-led action? Why should we focus on it? Should we focus on it, and why? Okay, you've got about 2 minutes to do that. Hi. Morning. If you just want to join the group in the back there. About 2 minutes. Okay. You need to join a group working with these guys, perhaps. You want to grab a chair, introduce yourself. If you've got any ideas that you've done in your school, just write them down on the post-it. So you might have done something, the students might have done something, action, then write it down, example on that post-it. We'll use them later. Okay? Hi. Okay? So if you have some examples of action in your school the students have taken, whatever that might be, just write each one down on a post-it. So if you don't know what it means, doesn't matter. We'll come back to that later. Let's bring that to a close. We'll actually work a little bit more in a little while. So, thanks. All right, anyone, any group like to share anything? Just to start us off, get us going a little bit. Sharing some ideas that you talked about, anyone? Yes, yes, please.
We think it's, so as in like 1, 2, and
yeah, whatever you like, anything you like, yeah.
Yeah, student-led action kind of, who is in the title, basically passing responsibility over to the students. They can manage the project or whatever it is, and they take the lead, they're responsible for it, they're accountable. We might give them guidelines, framework, but essentially they're kind of in charge of pushing.
So giving responsibility to the students, very good, yeah, thanks. Yep.
I think to me it also includes not, it can do the what, but also how students learn.
Yeah.
In what mode best suits them. Also, it kind of reminds me of constructivist teaching, where you take the kids take the reins of the entire project, whether it's a one-day project or months.
Yeah. Well, it is geared within a constructivist program, yes, and that's what we work upon. So definitely within that, it's looking at projects. So, looking at definition, here's a few definitions that we, as a school, when we were looking at what we wanted to do from student-led action, we wanted to make more of a focus on it. So we wanted to first of all define what it meant. We chose the term student-led rather than student-initiated because we felt the student-led action was a much broader approach and encompassed a lot more. So we wanted to also bring in the word positive because obviously there can be the positive and negative. Students can take positive actions, they can take negative actions, and we want to focus on the positive. So bringing in that idea of being positive, which has a desirable, constructive outcome. Student-led, as our colleague here talked about, aiming to give the student greater control, ownership and accountability over what they do. And action, so the fact or process of doing something to achieve an aim. And then an overall definition that we came up with was students actively responding to classroom engagements to extend their learning. Okay, so that was our overall, when we were talking about this, our overall definition of what we felt that student-led action was. Particularly going back to the why question, why should we do it? And we've really felt that education is not just about learning knowledge, doing tests, doing exams, and we wanted a much more holistic approach in our school to education and looking at how students can take much more responsibility, how they can have a wider impact upon themselves, on others, the community and the environment. So we really wanted this to be a big focus of it, partly because we think it's important, partly because it's part of our curriculum. So talking about the International Baccalaureate a little bit, if you're not familiar with it, throughout the 4 programs of the International Baccalaureate, action or service learning is an integral part of our school curriculum. In fact, in the PYP, in the primary years, I'm a primary years person, but this is relevant to secondary if there's any secondary teachers here as well, but this is specifically about primary. You can see the quote there, what the belief is of the PYP, which is the primary years program, that we really believe that this is an important part. And we have 5 essential elements basically of our program, which is knowledge, skills, concepts, attitudes and action. So this is a fifth of our curriculum, if you like to think of it like this, like that. However, when we actually came to look at it, we weren't really focusing on it. And we talked with the students, they don't really knew what action was, which is what prompted us to focus much more on it. And particularly in the last few months, this has really come about since we did a workshop back in February. So, the next question we asked ourselves was, what does action look like? And it's a little bit small there, a little bit fuzzy. but I'll give you a copy of this to take away at the end there. But we found this graphic which we really liked, and we decided to adopt this as really the key way of thinking about student action. And as you can see, there's many examples of action that can be taken around these 6 broad headings, which was: I want to inform people, I want to change my behavior or my choices. This is, think of it from an aspect of a student saying this. I want to inspire others to change their behavior or choices. I want to help prevent a problem or improve a situation. I want to build something to understand my topic better. Or I want to design a solution. And under these, you can see all these bullet points here. There's things like making a website, taking photos, organising a class visit, designing an app, asking an expert, drawing blueprints, taking an action plan. There is a little bit in there about charity, but sometimes there's this idea that action is about raising money and supporting charity, but that is a part of it, but there's so much more to it than just that idea of supporting charities, for example, or raising money, which is always a difficult one here. And then when we looked at this, we discussed it as a team and as a school, and we liked this, but we felt there was something missing. So this one here is one we added later, because the other sort of action we wanted students to take was actually about themselves, that they wanted to know more about something. And rather than wait and sit in the classroom to be told what they needed to do, we want them to actually know what they want to do and actually take action in learning themselves through perhaps research, through looking at videos, asking questions, talking to people, interviewing people, doing surveys, that sort of thing. So these are our 7 headings that we are using to actually frame the action in our school and how to do it. So that's what it looks like. The second question we asked ourselves was, okay, what is a good action and what is perhaps not so good action, and that we want students to take. And we came across another model called Hart's. Just give me a moment. If you know this one, Hart's ladder of participation. So, in the understanding of participation, what I'd like you to do is I've taken a model. It looks a bit like this, and the answers are there, but you can't look at them. There is a ladder, and in your packs that I've given you, I think there's one group there that may not have one, there are some titles and some definitions. So you might have 2 different colour cards. These are the titles, and these are the definitions. Okay? Your first job, you've got 2 jobs to do in your group. The first job is to match the title with the type of action which is defined there. So try and do that between you. So look at what the title is, match those up. Secondly, and this is a bit more tricky, put them in the order of which you think is the most effective action at the bottom, and which is the least effective action at the bottom, and the most effective at the top. Now, this is where I needed my tables, but I didn't get them, so we'll have to just manage, either bring up a chair to do it on, or do it on the floor, or whatever. So I apologise if you're having to crawl around on the floor, but that's the way it is. So, you're looking at matching the 2 together, and then trying to put them in an order of importance. Hello. This one? Yeah. Yeah. Please. Do you use this one, because that's. Those are our packs. So you've got about 10 minutes, I think. We'll do this for. Yes.
Just to verify, you're saying match these but also prioritize these?
Yes.
Okay.
So match them first probably, and then put them in which you think is the most.
Starting from down to the top?
Yeah, either way, it doesn't matter really. It's just more thinking about which is good action perhaps and which is not so good, and which is the most, what are you aiming for in terms of what we're doing. Are you okay?
Not sure what decoration.
Are you observing? No, Sharon. Okay. I was a shame. I thought there was going to be tables here, so they're all having to do it on the table. Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's all right. No, they're managing. They're managing on chairs, so that's fine. I wanted a bit more of an interactive.
To do their feedback session as well. Have you been told by the room manager to do?
Yeah. At the end. I've just hidden it though, so they can't do it. Only if it's good. Right, are you done?
I think we've got these 4, and then the other 4, we're not sure.
If you want to take a sneaky look, they're on the board up there. You're more than likely to cheat. You can go and have a look there if you're not sure.
That was might be calculation. Give the voice. Go with that.
You can check it. You can check up there if you like. If you want to go and have a quick check. But you got to try and don't tell them the order though, because that's the next task. When you think you've got it, try and put them in order of what you think. If you're really confused, maybe try and put them on a chair. Might be that help you a little bit. Would that be? Can I just move those over there for you? I don't know who those. Would you mind just putting those there? Okay. It's tricky, huh? It's tricky. Are you okay?
See the topics, right?
Yep.
Child initiated and directed.
So after decorating, this one is the second. Yeah, this one is the second one. Okay, then. So similar. Assign looking form.
No, we are starting from quarter.
Okay. This one is until consult with the initiative will also come down. This one.
Right, I'll give it 2 more minutes or a minute and a half. If you're really stuck, you can go and have a look at the board. The answers are on there. If you want a little bit of a hint, feel free to go and have a look there.
Okay. I'm going to go with it.
Aha. Better go. Check I've got the right one. It's not easy, is it? No. All right. Thanks, everyone. You did it? Brilliant. Okay, if I can bring you back to the front here, and we'll share some of that. Okay. Thank you, ladies. We'll go through the answers. Right, thanks, everyone. Well done. It's not very easy. I know there's a lot of discussion backwards and forwards, and it's very easy to make these if you want to have a go with your staff. It's something which is an interesting way of promoting discussion, thinking about what we want students to be doing within our classrooms, and actually, more importantly perhaps, beyond our classrooms and outside of that. So, I don't know if you got all the way through to the end. It doesn't really matter, because I'm going to give you a copy of this at the end, so I don't have to take photos or anything. This is the order that Hart has them in. Now, it could be a little bit controversial. You may not agree. And we thought actually they were pretty accurate, and we agreed roughly with this idea of what this hierarchy of action. The three bottom ones, manipulation, decoration, tokenism, are basically ones that you want to avoid. Okay? So those are ones you want to avoid, but they do happen, and there are plenty of examples that we had where we actually did them. And if you have a post-it now with some action on it, what's quite useful, if one of you wants to come up and do this, try and put up your example of action here, where it would be on that hierarchy. So if you've got a post-it down there with some action written on, bring it up and stick it on. Which one do you think it would go under? And we actually did this as a staff. Yep. So just stick it where it would go. Good. That's okay. Okay. Feel free. You know, we're not going to grade you on these, don't worry. No marks given. Excellent. So, what we did as a staff, we did exactly what we've just done there. We took this model, we wrote down all, before we actually looked at it, we wrote down all the examples of action that we had done in our school, as many as we could, and then we put them down on this, and it gave us a really clear picture of whereabouts on here we were. And actually most of ours were around this area here. And what we recognised then was around the adult initiated. The students weren't really taking their own action. They were waiting to be said, right, let's do this, let's have this campaign. Why are we going to be kind to each other? Let's have a kindness campaign. It wasn't actually coming from the students, it was coming from us. So most of the action that was being generated in the school was mostly us saying, let's do this or do that. There wasn't much coming from the students. What we want to aim for is this idea of child-initiated shared decisions with adults. So that's your ultimate aim. That's what we're trying to get to now with our students as a school. We're trying to get to that point. So what is that? That means students come up with an idea. They come up to the teachers. They say, oh, we're really... And I'll give you an example that happened to us recently. It was about a friendship bench. One of the students had seen something about a friendship bench, and they said, oh, we need a friendship bench because there's people who are playing in the playground, they don't have any friends. If we have a friendship bench, then maybe they can make friends, they can sit on the bench. It was student initiated. It wasn't us coming up with that idea, it was coming from them. But to make it happen, we had to be involved as well. But we didn't want to say, oh, yes, that's great, let's go and buy a bench. We said, okay, let's get some money, we'll raise some money, you do a fundraiser, and we'll help you organise that. What fundraisers do you want to do? Maybe it was a bake sale, actually, that we did. So you did a bake sale, we raised the money, they got the bench, they decorated the bench. I haven't got a picture of it, it's very nice. With the art teacher, spent lunchtimes and everything. This group, really enthusiastic, came around, put a lot of effort into decorating the bench, and ended up actually with a whole area, a friendship area in the playground, which was really nice. So that's a good example there of what we want from child-initiated shared decisions with adults. There's nothing wrong with any of these. There are a few things wrong with these, though. So if you find yourselves in your school doing a lot of these, adults, particularly this one, adults using children to support causes that they think is important to them, where the students don't really understand why they're doing it, or maybe not even agree with what they're doing it because they've been told to. Okay? And sometimes things go wrong as well. Okay. The other point that we brought in was actually this revolved around discussion about the moral education initiative as well. Because the moral education, we felt moral education was a great opportunity for students to take positive action. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the moral education framework that was introduced this year. So one of the things that we looked at was we don't just want to do moral education as a lesson, a subject they do for an hour a week and then it's done. And they tick it off and they know about moral education. It's much more important that they actually see that in reality and do and take action about what they're doing. So I gave you some cards. Now let's see the time. We probably haven't got... We might come back to this. So on your table you've got a card. This has got a moral education outcome from it. So some of them really lend themselves to student-led action. Yep. You do now. There we are. I have yours. Oh, that was someone. Yep. Yeah, they're different. They're different. So you can take your moral education program and by going through each grade level, looking at what specific ones lend themselves to specific action, particularly in the idea of morality, treating others with kindness and respect, that sort of thing, but also how we can contribute to society and that sort of area. There's a wealth and a richness within that moral education curriculum which you can really tap into to inspire students to take action. Going back to the other ones there. We'll see if we've got time to come back to that at the end. Okay. So here we're just going to go through some ideas about what we then did, what action we took as a school to try and promote action. And as I said at the beginning, this is ongoing. This is this term we were doing this. So the first thing we did was our co-curricular activities. We said we opened them out, so we co-taught, so there's 2 teachers to every activity. And secondly, we opened it out so we were from K2 all the way up to grade 5 with students working together across the age groups, whereas before we'd had narrow bands of age groups for our co-curriculars. This was all the way, so we got our 6-year-olds working with our 11-year-olds, and that I think worked really well, and it was really a good dynamic for the older students, the younger students to be working together. The teachers were a little bit nervous about it, but when they actually did it, they really enjoyed it, and the students really enjoyed interacting with different age groups as well. So here's some of the ones we did. So they're nothing new. You might have these clubs anyway running in your school. There's nothing new. I said we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We can use these, but we have to take action with it. So friendship bracelets, something that we commonly do, making friendship bracelets. But then what do we do? Well, we actually use those to go and give them to other students. Okay, so they were specifically done, they were wrapped up and given as a gift to other students, so that other students receive those. Storytelling club, they practiced some stories, and then they went round at lunchtimes, they had a little storytelling group, and that was their action to share stories with the rest of the school. Kindness campaign, they made cakes. And they went up every day, they made cakes, they made a whole batch of cakes, and then they went round and they gave them to people. They left them on teachers' desks with nice little notes saying about kindness and saying positive things. Some environmental ones, the perils of plastics. We all know about these plastic bottles nowadays and plastic bags, and that is really something that they did. And actually they were in the swimming pool and they put loads of plastic in there and they were swimming in it just to experience what that would be like. And then they've organised a much more thorough recycling campaign in the school. This is my group. Here's my profile penguins. And we had a little group, we called ourselves the Penguin Positive Parade. And so we dressed up as penguins, we all went round. And the idea was we would go into a teacher's room, we would give them a positive note, and then we would stand there and they'd have to write a positive note to someone else, and then we'd waddle off and then go and visit the next teacher and give them a positive note. And it went on. It was like a little ongoing thing. We're going to do that on Wednesday again. So that was a nice little activity. The kids loved it. It was fun. But it also got that idea of them taking action to make someone feel good. Profile power looks at the learner profile of the IB, and friendly faces. They just went round and left smiley faces everywhere and in strange places, so people would open books and a smiley face would fall out. So all these just little things, but actually it was a real good buzz. There was a real good atmosphere. It really, I felt, worked very well, and I was pleased with that. And then that next Monday we're going to share all those activities we've been doing with parents in our action fair. So these are old photos, I'm afraid. I had to dig out from previous school. But next Monday we have our action fair. So all those ECA groups are going to be displaying to the parents and to the other students what they've been doing. So we're trying to get the students to understand what action is and what they can do and all the different varieties of action there are through doing these things. Yeah. A few other ideas. We talked about how we can explicitly plan within our planning, whether it be moral education or our normal curriculum, how we can plan for and how we should plan for specific action to take place. That's not that we're going to say, right, you will do this action, but providing opportunities for action to happen based on what we're teaching in the curriculum. So whether that be environmental units or whatever. So that was one idea, so we need to plan for it. What action do we want the students to take? Within that, it's really important that we talk about it and we get it out there, that the students understand. So it's not hidden away and we're saying, oh, we're planning action, but actually get it out there and say, right, what action are you going to take with this unit? We're doing a unit on recycling. What are you going to do and how are we going to record it? And so we talked about action logs going backwards and forwards to school and home. We haven't put them in place yet. That's for next year. So they will have an action log which goes through the school and records action they've taken. Yep. Okay. And then in having displays and action walls, and we're actually using this ladder to actually think about recording where our action is. We don't put these three up, we put these 3, 4, and we use that as a display. We thought about using biographies and role models, and how there are so many people out there doing great action, and how we need to build that into our curriculum, and as part of our units of inquiry in the PYP, how we can actually use specific role models and examples of people who have taken positive action within the...
Hello everyone, I hope you're enjoying this workshop. Please do the survey before you leave the room. The link and the password is on the board. So
hidden.
Once you're done with the workshop, please do the survey and then you're all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll show you it afterwards, it's hidden. And then really involving the community, how we can involve our parents, our community, and what our parents are already doing to take action. Well, you know, lots of our parents are involved in projects which would be good examples and role models for our students to do, and we invite them in to talk to the students and give examples of that. Yep, please do.
It sounds like a lot of student-led stuff happening, and I think IB kind of caters to that.
Yeah.
Kind of that construct. I can see some teachers in some places, in some schools, say, when do I do this? When and because I have to get through a curriculum. Mm-hmm. So, are these projects kind of embedded in your day, or is it a side project, or is it part of the everyday work that happens in the classroom?
A bit of everything. To answer that, yes, we plan for it specifically, and it is part of our units of inquiry. We have units of inquiry like topics or whatever, and they're embedded within that unit. But also external to that, like our ECAs, like our bake sale, whatever that might be, we open ourselves up to that and whatever the students want to do and take that. So lunch times, break times, they do things like that. So it's very fluid, very open, but we're open to the idea. But we do actually build it into the curriculum. It's not yet, but we're working on that. We're trying to get there. That's our aim, to make it part of the culture of our school, yeah.
Well, I was wondering, this works pretty perfect with the early age students or the middle age students. But when we are studying or when coaching students of post-16, sixth formers or IGs, where they have a particular syllabus to follow, and they have a particular time to finish, and the grades are hunting them all the time because they have universities to get admissions over there. Yeah. So how do you cope with those students with these plannings?
I might have to get you to answer this one. I mean, well, there is a service learning element to our post-16 education, which is called Community Action Service. Yes, please.
Yes, so as part of the IB, in sixth form, the diploma program, which is incredibly rigorous, has a requisite requirement to pass the diploma to do so much creativity action service, or CAS as they call it. So the students have to do it. It's incredibly difficult and time challenging, but they get an enormous amount out of it, and you see that they really start to feed back to the school community. They run to students, reach out into the community, and the things that Martin's talking about here, the primary age students. You can imagine as the kids get to 16, 17, 18, it's some quite wonderful things that they do. Directed plays, writing and directing plays, running sports teams, organising tournaments and things like that. So it's incredibly powerful. It's tough, time-wise.
Yeah. So my daughter is in grade 11, my son's in grade 12, so they've been through this. So they have to log it on the system, and you know, like my daughter goes down to the kindergarten, reads on a weekly basis, that counts. So all those sorts of things, like taking specific action, counts towards that requirement. It is difficult, it's tough, but we also study 6 subjects as well, so it's incredibly tough. But we think, I mean, the IB recognise it as something that's vitally important, that they feel is vital enough that if you don't do it, and if you don't fill that login, you fail everything, you cannot pass. You cannot pass your end of secondary certificate, basically. Right, I'm very conscious of time, so I'm just going to whiz on. So I'm just about finished now. Just a model that we looked at and adopted was to choose to act to reflect. It's quite common, you can find it on the Pinterest or on the website. But it gives you quite a model for students to think about what that means. Okay, so what they have choices to make. And this also can come into your behaviour as well. Your students have choices to make in terms of their behaviour and how they act. but then they have to reflect on that and what consequences that had on others. I'll give you one example of something that didn't work, which was a very a learning thing for us as a school, in my previous school actually. And we had this project which was instigated by one of the secondary teachers. It was a great idea. Yes. Thank you. So we have, well, yeah, I can't be late. We have, that is awesome train of thought now. Go, okay. So she said, well, it was a brilliant idea actually, this came out. She said, well, why don't we get the kids to bring in, on a Wednesday, 2 lunches? And it was great, it was fantastic. So we said, yeah, let's bring in 2 lunches. So we'll bring 2 lunches, they'll eat one, and then we'll give the other one to some, across the construction site across the way. It was a great idea. And for about a week, it worked really well. For the first 2 weeks, it worked really well, got loads of lunches. But then it started to taper off. So she was going, oh, well, and then the other issue was there was all different types of lunches, and there was all food, and how do we do it, and how do we distribute it? And then they would go to the construction site and ended up having to hand it out the windows, and it was really didn't work. You know, even though a good idea might come, and it was a brilliant idea. So then we decided, okay, we won't do that, we'll sell pizza, and we'll use the money to buy the pizza to buy lunches for the workers. So what were we actually doing there? We thought that was a great project, but actually what we were doing was actually teaching the kids just go and have pizza on a Thursday. You know, and there wasn't really any connection between buying a piece of pizza and feeding some workers out on the construction site. So there's a little bit of caution there, and we actually learned quite a lot from that by saying, actually, you know, you have to be always reflecting and thinking about what you're doing to make sure that you're actually not giving the wrong messages over. Okay? So, just to finish off, key takeaways. You really have to make it visible to students. You have to be specific and talk about them. Plan for it to happen. It's not going to happen by choice. And students don't naturally, and we don't naturally, take action naturally. You don't. Let's be honest with ourselves. We read about things which are terrible, but do we do anything about it? Generally not. I mean, some of us are very good at that, others perhaps not so. So it won't naturally happen. You've got to sort of encourage it. You've got to have a culture of being open to students taking action and in a broad way. So don't narrow it down to say, well, action is this. Action can be many things, okay, as we saw from our model earlier. And then really keep this in mind. I'll give you a copy of this, but keep this in mind when you're thinking about it and how you're going to be working. This is what we're doing, trying to work our way up this ladder to try and put most of our action in here. Okay. A little last word there, you can read that if you like, Mark Prensky. I'm not sure I agree 100% with all this, but it's quite a controversial view. Education has been about improving individuals. What education should be about in the future is improving the world. And this is the important bit, and having individuals improve in the process. So a little bit of food for thought there in terms of where we should be going with education. It's quite an interesting one around the book. Yep, thank you. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Looks like I'm done. Okay, so there it is. Evaluation on there. If you want a sheet, there's some on the chair there. Hope you found some interesting. I'm going to stick some photos up just quickly of our exhibition, which starts on tomorrow. These are our grade 5s. But just feel free to do this and do that. I'm just going to flick through some of these, showing our grade 5s taking some action in their exhibition. So if you go onto that website, if you're on the web, just click on that one and you can do the survey.